Look at him, he's heading for that small moon.
I think I can get him before he gets there. He's almost in range.
That's no moon.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's time to take a closer look at the infamous Death Star, the British Tier 10 TD, the FV215B183. This tank boasts the largest caliber gun in the game, capable of crippling enemy tanks with a single shot. In fact, this tank was never built, but existed only in blueprints, although one single wooden mock-up was manufactured in the 1950s. The design, as you might be able to see, is based on the hull of the Conqueror heavy tank, the Tier 9 tank, which is also known as the FV214. Anyway, let's have a look at this TD's most prized asset, the 183mm L4 main armament. The AP ammunition has a whopping 310mm of penetration, which is the highest base penetration of any tank in the game, and this gun can dish out the damage with an average damage of 930 on the AP, which can go as high as 1162, or what is the equivalent of slightly over 50% of an E100's hit point pool. The AP shell can one-shot an ISU roughly 35% of the time. Just think about that, one-shotting a tier 8 opponent, you don't get that very often. The really interesting aspect about the ammunition is however not the AP, it's the HESH ammunition, or high explosive squash head, which has basic penetration of 220mm and doing 1300 of damage, and actually going as far up as 1625 HP with a penetrating shot. The gun has an aim time of 3 seconds and the dispersion at 100 meters is 0.4. The reload of the gun is a mind-blowing 22 seconds at base, and even running vents, buff food, and a rammer, you can't get it under 19 seconds, which is very KV2-ish. This also means that the DPM is 2540 with the AP shells. In patch 2.4, the dispersion values of the tank, whilst rotating the turret, were buffed significantly, as well as the aim time being reduced from an initial 3.4 seconds to the current 3 seconds, giving this tank much better gun handling and making it much more fun to drive. And if you, like me, drove the Death Star prior to update 2.4, you will know exactly what I'm talking about. Personally, I think Wargaming were a bit nervous about introducing this tank and having the player base state that it was OP, and therefore introduced it with slightly worse gun handling than they might have wanted to have initially. Looking at the mobility of this tank actually has pretty reasonable mobility compared to, for example, the T110E3 and the Jaegeru, and it comes equipped with a frontally mounted 800 horsepower Rolls-Royce engine. The engine is pretty good, but there's one weak point about it: it catches fire pretty easily, so if you get shot in the front, be prepared to have either a quick finger on the multi-restoration pack or an automatic fire extinguisher on board. At a weight of 60 tons, this tank has a power-to-weight ratio of 13.33, meaning it can be quite nimble as long as you stay away from soft and medium terrain, as the TD has horrific terrain resistances. The traverse speed is actually also a class best at 32 degrees a second, which is 2 degrees quicker than the Object 268, and this means that medium tanks will have a hard time circling you. Another interesting aspect about this TD is the fact that it has a traversable turret. Although it does not traverse all the way around, it traverses 45 degrees to each side, which means that it's 45 degrees less than the T110E3. The fact that the turret is mounted on the rear of the tank also limits the gun depression to a meager 5 degrees, but it also does allow you to side scrape, although not past a 20-degree angle, as you will see in Armor Inspector. Also note that the thickness of the armor is only 50mm, so any tank that has a 150mm or more caliber gun will overmatch the sides regardless of the angle, and tanks such as the E100 ISU, both Objects 704 and 268, both T110E3 and E4 will have no problems going through the side, along with a few other tanks. Armor-wise, the tank is, as mentioned, based on the Conqueror hull, meaning that the hull in general is pretty weak, but let's take a closer look at it in Armor Inspector. So I've selected to shoot at the FB215B1A3. I've selected the FV215B heavy tank. So this tank has 259 millimeters of base AP penetration, and as you can see in Armor Inspector, most of the front of the tank is actually white. So the big weak points that you need to know about is the lower frontal plate, which is 100 millimeters thick, roughly 100 millimeters thick. So anything that you meet is going to go through here very, very easily. And if you meet an opponent FB215B183, the lower plate is where you want to shoot it. The upper plate is not super strong, so even going hull down, you will still be reliably penetrated by almost every single tier 10 tank you can face. And a lot of tier 9s can easily go through as well. The turret, even though on paper it looks pretty strong, it's not that strong. Looking at it directly from the front, you can see that it has these weak spots here, which have 175 millimeters, and the sides are not great either, with only around 220 millimeters. The only really strong part about the turret is the gun mantlet. The gun mantlet can reliably bounce pretty much anything that people are going to shoot at you. So if you're hull down against tier 10 tanks, don't rely on your turret to bounce anything. So the side of this tank is very, very weak, as I mentioned earlier. It only has 50 millimeters up here, along the top side of the hull. And down near the tracks it goes up to 75 millimeters, but there's also a bit of... the tracks are also there, so they will work as spaced armor. So looking at the back, this tank has no armor. So a lot of tanks will be able to penetrate it with HE, or at least a lot of tank destroyers will. And that's very much the case in this tank. You really need to keep away from the enemies. You need to make sure that you can reliably decide how often the enemies are going to be able to shoot at you, and that you can always give them only one shell in return without taking more than a single shot from the enemies. So without further ado, let's get into some gameplay and see how this tank works out. So here we are, we're on Fort Despair. This map is decent for this tank. You can take some pretty defensive positions, and that's what I'm gonna do. I'm platooned with my good clanmate Sesbor, who's an excellent player. And hi Sesbor, hope you watch the video and enjoy yourself on YouTube. So as you can see, the enemy, they only have one medium tank, and we're pushing almost... the whole team is pushing down towards where the heavies and TDs usually slug it out. And I want to take a defensive position here. I'm not in a great position. If I was, I would be able to shoot to the left part, you can see on the left side of the screen, but I can't do that right now, and I don't want to move too much around. But I do see that the Object 140, he's coming around the back, so he's flanked. Sesbor, he turns around to engage him, as well as the remainder of our team. So a bunch of enemies have been spotted now, amongst others the Tortoise, who's gonna get the first shot. So pretty decent shot, did 1030 damage, and that's really showcasing the potential of this tank, because that was a pretty high roll. And when you land those shots and you have a position like this where you can pull back into some very decent hard cover, then you can simply just bully the enemies. This tank is not good for being overrun. It doesn't perform well because it means that you'll have to have a decent reload. While I do try to go for a shot on the E100, I don't manage to connect. I hit his tracks as he's angling inwards, so unfortunately it doesn't penetrate. But he's gonna get a shell in just a second, and as you can see right now, with the basic AP ammunition, I'm able to penetrate his turret cheeks, and not a lot of tanks can do that. I also do notice now that the enemy, they are quite close to winning by capping, so I ask my team to defend, and I accentuate that by writing defend, defend, and I hope that they manage to reset, and luckily they do. So we're in a very comfortable position now. You saw the great penetration against the E100 turret. I had no problems going through him. And this Jagdpanzer, he's gonna get one as well. I don't normally shoot the cheeks of these tanks unless I'm using gold, but in this tank I have no problems doing so.
That blast came from the Death Star. That thing's operational.
So yeah, basically the penetration is just amazing. 310 millimeters lets you get through any tank frontally and without any problems whatsoever. So I'm trying to hunt down this Jagdpanzer 100. I've loaded one of my cheap HE shells, but I do switch to the expensive ones. But our tortoise managed to take some out, and we only have a T-34 remaining and the IS-3. So I'm going to try to put a nice shot into the IS-3. And I managed to connect and do 877 damage.
If you only knew the power of the dark side.
So yeah, the E100 Jagdpanzer, he accuses me of shooting APCR against him. Clearly he doesn't have this tank, because then he would know that this tank's premium ammunition is not APCR, it's HESH, high explosive squash head, as I mentioned in the garage. But this game is pretty much in the bag, so it's basically just a matter of Sesbor taking down the final enemy, and we finish off the game in pretty good manner. Sesbor managing to land a 63 hit point ammo rack, but what are you gonna do? So this was a decent game, not great, but it did showcase the amazing penetration of this tank. I did manage to pick up 3,700 damage, and Sesbor managed to do 1,800. So on to the next game. This time we are gonna be on Castilla. This map is one of my favorite maps in the game. I really think that you get some very versatile battles, and it's not monotone like some of the other maps. For example, Middelburg, where everyone goes up, or what's it called, Falls Creek, where everyone basically just goes and slugs it out at the base. But this map, it offers a variety, although I do prefer going around the riverside, especially in this tank, because you get these very, very nice and big rocks that you can use as cover. So especially considering how our team is moving, we are the two FVs. It's me and Sesbor again. And we are in a bit of trouble, because we only have an E75 following us, and we need someone, preferably someone with a fast shooting gun that can delay the enemies advancing on us. So I managed to get into this pretty okay position, looking for shots of opportunity across the river area, trying to get a bit forward so I can see if there's someone coming from the city. But a 62A appears, and he spots me, and I have to pull back. So I don't want someone to come around or doing long range shots at me, but we see the object 268, a great TD. So, and basically what we just did there, we traded a 900 hit point shot for a 600 hit point shot. So that was actually a very, very good trade for us, and that's something that you really need to focus on when you're playing this tank. It's simply trading shots with the enemies 1 for 1. So that means that you take one shot in return and they try to give you one. So I try to land a shot in the cheeks of the mouse turret, but unfortunately I don't connect. So I managed to pull back during my abysmally long reload and wait it out. So trying to keep eyes on what's going on here. I see the mouse, he's in a pretty good position, trying to go in and see if I can get a shot, and he bounces off what must have been my gun handler. But I spot the Conqueror up on the ridge, and he's tracked. So I'm going to reverse back and see if I can connect a shot to his turret. And yes, bingo. Not even a high roll, that wasn't even an above average roll, but 909 damage was more than enough to take him out with a single shot. So now we still have this full hit point mouse, and this mouse, he really should be advancing much more aggressively, especially considering that our E75 is shooting HE ammunition at him. So I'm going to have a shot on him in a second, because he's going to advance out before he's done reloading. And he does so quite aggressively, and he manages to get a great shot into the side, doing a very, very nice damage. So pretty much so far this game, we've only landed a shot on the object, we've landed a shot on the Conqueror, and we've landed a shot on the mouse. But combined, we've almost done 1,000 or 3,000 damage, and that's just something you will never do in any other tanks. So I get hit big time, set on fire. He does a very, very high roll on me, and he almost takes me out with the fire. So I'm in a bit of a precarious situation now, because I'm a one-shot, and they do have 3 medium tanks left, and any one of those is going to be able to penetrate me pretty much anywhere or from any angle. So the 62A, he's definitely the most dangerous of them. So I try to take a snapshot, and a shot like that would never have worked in update 2.3. This tank, after the buff, I really feel it's probably my favorite tier 10 TD to play. It's a lot more fun and it's a lot more versatile than it used to be. Previously, you really had to have the enemy standing 100% still to have any chance of hitting them. And now you can actually pull off snapshots. You can do. You don't have to be fully aimed. You can shoot while you're traversing your turret, and that really just gives you a lot more flexibility than you used to have. Also, I've been practicing a bit with the side scraping. You're not going to see that in this replay, but as I mentioned in Armor Inspector, you can actually side scrape pretty effectively as long as the enemies don't have a 150mm or more caliber gun. And that just really gives you some amazing flexibility when you're fighting, when you're engaging, for example, an IS-7 or a Mouse, an IS-4, pretty much any heavy tank that's not an E100 or a tier 10 TD. So this game is also pretty much in the bag. The 54, he gets one-shotted by Sesbor, great shot by him. And we did manage to do pretty good for ourselves in this game. We managed to pick up, I think it was around 4,300 damage, and I got a mouse kill medal, so 10 mouses. I don't know how many I've got of those, but not many. You don't see many mouses around. So anyway, off to the next gameplay. This time we're on the reworked Oasis Palms, and I tell my team that I'm going right. We have a T95, some pretty decent mediums, and they also have a pretty quick team, so that's why I decided it's best to go right, to try to intercept the mediums and see if we can stop them. So I see the E50, he's moving now, but oh, he's going to push the T95. Don't push a T95 in a tier 10 heavy tank. That's at least what I tell him, and that is definitely my opinion. In a top tier medium tank, you really need to get into position quickly and make the initial spots for your team so that they can use their excessive firepower to put down the hurt on the enemy team. So we're pushing through the dunes here. We spot the 704. He's moved pretty aggressively into the center of the map, as well as on the far side, someone else is also engaging us, and that's the T54. We can't really get a shot on him from here. The gun, as I've mentioned earlier, it doesn't have great gun depression, but it does give you sufficient flexibility to use the surroundings, as I'm doing now, by reversing back, and I try to take a shot on this IS-7. Badly aimed shot. That would have connected if I just aimed a little more to the right, and our M103 gets taken out pretty quickly. So I have multiple enemies now, and I'm screaming at myself for wasting the shot on the IS-7 when I would have had perfect opportunities to hit the sides of the T62 and the T54. I do, however, manage to land a pretty decent shot on the IS-7 as our T95 gets taken out by their Object 268. So I'm spotted for the first time in this game. I reverse back. I don't want to go into get shot at by multiple enemies. But I can see that I can advance up the hill again without them being able to attack me. So I get a perfect opportunity to land a head shot. But I only hit his tracks, unfortunately, because that would have completely taken off 60, 70, as high as 75% of the hit points of that tank. So the 54, he's pushing around, and I have another opportunity to land a head shell, and I managed to do so. So he's looking, oh, beautiful hit. Even though it was a pretty low roll, I did manage to do 1,170 damage, and miraculously, I bounced the IS-7 shot off the side of my tank. So here comes the T62A. He's going to try to circle me. He does manage to get a shot in, but you can see I'm catching up to him. If this was even though the building is there, if it wasn't there, I would still have been able to catch up because the T62A just doesn't have the mobility to circle me. The only tank that I feel can reliably circle you in this when you're driving the FE is the Leopard, and the Leopard is going to be taking a massive risk by attacking you because you can completely wreck his tank with Hesh pretty much anywhere. So I break down the wall so the IS-7 can't go hull down, and I manage to connect to his lower plate, but I do take a shot in return first. So it's just the M103 left, and he's on very low hit points. So I load out another cheap HE shell, try to go for the shot on him, but our IS-7 finishes him off pretty quickly. So this was another pretty good game, I think. This game showcased the armor and how quickly this tank can turn and also move around the battlefield. So we did manage to do almost 4,000 damage and get a pretty good game. So, next game is on Winter Malinovka. We have one tier 10 more than them, but this gameplay is going to show that that doesn't always make a deciding factor. The enemies are going to win this game because our team, they just don't deal enough damage compared to their own hit points. So I'm pushing up towards the mill area. I don't want to go all the way up to the mill in this tank because I don't have the turret armor. I don't have the flexibility and the maneuverability to really engage quickly, so I position myself here. I have binoculars on this tank, so I make sure that they come into use and sit here and hope that I'm going to get a shot into one of the enemies that are advancing up towards the mill. So I spot immediately that our VK is pushing up. Actually, pretty much all of our heavy tanks are pushing up, whilst our T-54, he's going around the lake area. So I haven't spotted anything yet, so I try to change position. Maybe the Object 268 is camping on a hill, but he isn't. And I see the IS-7 advancing up, as well as the T-54, and one T-54 down here. So I don't know if I'm gonna get a shot. Oh, I did manage to get a shot. Unfortunately, it was a blind shot, so you didn't see the damage, but you can calculate it yourself. Approximately 970 as far as I can see. So a very good shot, a very high roll, and very pleasing. And it was a good start to the game, because I can see that even though that our team got to the mill first, they're having some trouble, and they perhaps didn't push aggressively enough. But I get another opportunity to shoot at the Object 268 and manage to connect big time to him. So I took off basically half of his health, almost half of his health there, and that was a very good trade for me, because so far I haven't taken any damage, and I've dished out 2 shots. So here we have an E75. I want to go for the shot, but I shoot it into the ground even though I was aiming a bit in front of him. So that's a bit of a problem now, because our 54, he's alone against another 54 and an Object 268. I really want to help him out, but my reload is very long, so I need them to stand still at some point. Preferably I want to shoot the Object 268, but the T-54 stops right where I'm aiming, and great shot into him. He's dead, but unfortunately the team at the mill is getting slaughtered, and our T-175, he's not very happy with me. He says, F you. That's not very nice of him, I think. I think I've had a pretty good impact in the game so far. But maybe they just pushed a bit too aggressively, so now I'm spotted. I go for the first shot I can on the Carnarvon. I was hoping to take him out in one shot, and our E75, he gets tracked because he's in a bad position. He should have stayed where I am, where he can hold down reliably, instead of going up on the hill where the enemies have easy tracking shots on him. So I'm just trying to stay hold down here, and I want to shoot these guys to do some damage, but I don't have the gun depression. I take a snapshot at the Object 704 and manage to connect. So basically the enemies are down to pretty much one shot, and I just wish the T-54 across the map would start taking out the enemies that I'm reducing to a fraction of their hit points. Unfortunately it doesn't manage to do so. So I go for another shot in the E75. I basically just have to hit his turret anywhere and I will penetrate, except for the gun mantlet. So as you can see now, I'm getting surrounded. The IS-7's behind me. I have an abysmal long reload, and I don't do much else this game. It turns into a defeat, and I do get an opportunity here, but I've run out of AP shells, and the HESH shell doesn't connect, or I only hit the ground. So not the best game, but let's check some more. So as you can see, I managed to pick up 5,400 damage, and my team didn't really have enough impact for me to carry the game. But anyways, off to the final gameplay of this review. It's on Himmelsdorf, which is pretty much a perfect map for this tank. I decide to go to the right side, even though the enemies don't have many mediums. I just don't want to get flanked by the 2 T-54s that the enemy team has. So I decide to help our T-54, and I do ask our 103, who's pushing very aggressively, to be careful. So I get spotted, T-54. I know that I can out-trade him big time, and he simply stands still and allows me to snapshot. So in update 2.3, that shot would never have connected. I would never ever have hit that shot. I would have gone flying across the other side of the map. But because of the buff that this tank received to the accuracy whilst traversing the turret, those shots are now a real possibility, and you'll see me take one more in just a second against the next T-54. So our team is already 2 tanks up, and it's going pretty well. I haven't been engaged by the big tier TDs yet, and the T-54 here, oh, if I had been ready there, I would have had a shot. He pulls back, oh, and another snapshot into the back of his tank, completely wrecking him. I took off almost 2/3 of his hit points. I spot the IS-8 here. I don't quite know what he's doing. He does look very, very passive. Someone shoots down the rock that's in front of him, and he's not really moving, so I think this is going to be a good opportunity for me to test out the capabilities of the HESH ammunition.
Now witness the firepower of this fully armed and operational battle station.
So, 1,322 damage. That's not so shabby in a tier 10 tank destroyer. I don't think anything else in this game, or nothing else in this game, is capable of dishing out the damage per shot as this tank, and it's simply so much fun. It really, really is. I find this is the most fun tier 10 TV to play. You can just annihilate the enemies, and with the improvements that this tank received in update 2.4, it's much easier to do so. So I get very lucky here. I actually make a mistake. My tank is too far forward, and the Jagdpanzer, he has a shot on me, and the enemies are pretty far down. They only have the Jagdpanzer and the T-95 left, so I'm not too concerned. I can easily take a shot from both of them without getting wrecked. So I kind of tunnel vision here, and this is a mistake. Don't ever tunnel vision in this tank, because I totally forget that the T-95 is over there, and luckily he isn't reloaded, or he just doesn't go for the shot on me. So I managed to get away, and I decide, let's go engage him. So most of you probably know the T-95 as the ultimate turtle of doom. This tank, the T-95, has amazing frontal armor, and just watch how easy it is to penetrate from the front with this tank. Most of it is the natural camo. It's not even concealed by the red hit skin, so no problems whatsoever going through. And for the next shot, look how easily I can make a precise shot whilst I do move my tank backwards and forwards. So moving back and forwards, just take a millisecond to aim and finish him off very, very quickly. So this was a pretty good game, I think. It did showcase the snapshot potential, and that really is what makes this tank so much fun now. So I did manage to do 5,500 damage and get number 1 on my team, and also made a pretty decent profit. So I hope you got an idea of how this tank plays. If not, and you get hit by one, don't be surprised if you end up looking like this guy.